Hi, good evening. I'm Lonnie Stonich, the Executive Director of FAN. We're a nonprofit that presents programming exploring human development across the lifespan. I'm honored to welcome you to tonight's conversation between two incredible writers, Maggie Smith and Gloria Edim. Thanks for joining us. FAN's YouTube channel has an archive of over 350 videos of past events, so be sure to subscribe to the channel to get updates when new recordings are posted. And now for some introductions. Maggie Smith is the New York Times bestselling author of several books, including You Could Make This Place Beautiful, Good Bones, and Keep Moving, Notes on Loss, Creativity, and Change. A 2011 recipient of a creative writing fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, Maggie is the recipient of multiple awards and prizes, paragraphs of them, and has been widely published, appearing in the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Paris Review, the Nation, the Best American Poetry, and more. We were so honored and thrilled to host Maggie in 2020 and again in 2023. So this is her third time. We're thrilled to welcome her back. Joining her is someone who's new to us and we just love her. Gloria Edim is the award-winning founder of Well Read Black Girl, an online platform and book club dedicated to celebrating the works of Black women authors and creating a supportive online community for readers. Under her leadership, Well Read Black Girl has grown into a nonprofit organization, hosting events, book festivals, and other conversations that highlight the richness and diversity of Black literature. Her 2024 book, Gather Me, a memoir in praise of the books that saved me, is a glowing testament to how the power of representation in literature can gather the disparate parts that make us who we are and assemble them into a portrait of discovery. It's a pleasure to have her back with FAN. And now let's welcome Maggie Smith and Gloria Edim.
Oh, thank you, Lonnie. Hi, Glory.
Hi, Maggie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is such an incredible moment. I'm so happy to be in conversation with you, Maggie.
Oh my gosh, me too. I've been following you forever, and here we are getting to be sort of in the same place at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. I have so many questions for you, but I'm going to start this conversation by reading your words to you. How's
Oh,
that?
okay. Okay.
We're just going to jump right into it. So
All
everyone
right.
knows we're celebrating Maggie's incredible book, Dear Writer. And when I started reading, I just felt like it was such a beautiful invitation. So I think it's perfect that we start here. Dear writer, I'm so glad you're here. The fact that you're reading these words tells me something about who you are, someone who loves art. You may be a writer or a teacher, you may be a reader and lover of language. Because you are here, I suspect we are kindred spirits. I have a feeling. I hope I'm right. That you are the kind of person who pays attention, who approaches others and the world with openness and curiosity, who finds beauty in unexpected places. Writer, I like you already. This is how your beautiful book starts. And I just was like grinning ear to ear because I was like, yes, I hear Maggie's voice in this. I hear you inviting us to like take this journey on with, with you. And I just want to start with the question of just like, this feels like a companion to anyone navigating the creative process. What inspired you to write this book at this particular time, especially in this particular moment in your career?
Yeah. I think I couldn't have written this book when I was 25, and I don't think I could have written this book when I was 35. I think I needed to have a couple of decades of teaching and writing and frankly failing and
Yeah.
getting back up again, right? That's the thing that I feel like that's when you earn the right to give someone else a little bit of advice on
Mhm.
their path, is when you've actually kind of been through some things and have some more to share. Um, but so much of why I wanted to write Dear Writer was to dispel myths
Mhm.
about the creative process. And one of those myths, and I know you in particular are with me on this. One of those myths is that we create alone.
Yeah.
And this idea that writing is solitary. And
Mhm.
sure, it looks solitary, right? Like we might be sitting at a coffee shop or in our office or at the kitchen table or, wherever we on an airplane, wherever we happen to be writing, and it looks like we're by ourselves. But you and I both know that when we sit down to write, all of the books that we have read
Yes.
are with us. All of those authors are with us in our heads, all of our teachers and our mentors and our writing friends and our friends who aren't writers but still have incredibly interesting things to tell us about ourselves and about the world. We're bringing all of that to bear when we sit down to write. So it was really important to me to open the book and, frankly, sort of tonally throughout the whole thing to just be like, hey, I'm a person
Yeah.
and you're a person too. And we're both maybe similar in that we're trying at something that is both beautiful and difficult. And
Yeah.
how can we feel less alone in that endeavor?
Yeah, the letter opens up with such an intimate and very nurturing feeling. And like you said, it goes throughout the book, like the structure of it with these like 10 essential, you know, not only like pep talks, but just kind of points of consideration just feels
Mm.
so beautiful. You start with attention and wonder and vision and surprise. Like you have it really detailed. And I was wondering if that was something that came to you as you were putting together the book, or has this been a philosophy that you've held on to throughout your years of being a poet and a writer and working with people? Or was this something you were finally able to craft together when you started this process of writing this book?
Well, it's actually kind of funny and maybe apropos, given how much I talk about revision
Mhm.
in this book, that I wrote the first draft of Dear Writer years ago before I wrote my memoir. And then when I decided to write the memoir, we kind of shelved this book, just put the draft away. I didn't get notes from my editor. It was really just sitting without being looked at. I wrote the memoir, published that, toured on the paperback, and then it was time to go back to that book that was in the pipeline and say, okay, now it's time for you. You've been
Yeah.
patiently waiting. And when I opened up the file and looked at the draft, I thought, oh, that's not the book I would write now. That's the book that I would have written 3 years ago. The book I would write now is actually a completely different book. So the first draft didn't have these 10 essential elements of creativity. It didn't have this structure. It didn't have the prompts that are in this book. And so I had to sit down with my editor and say, I'm going to walk the walk. This is what I tell my students. When you look at something and you
Mhm.
see things you want to change, it's your responsibility to change them and not to
Mhm.
get complacent and be like, well, this book is done. I should just publish it and move on to the next thing. And so I got permission to spend, another 9 to 12 months completely rewriting this book from scratch. And when I
Wow.
sat down to do that, I thought, I really want to, in some ways, answer reader questions because some of the questions I get either on my Substack or at Q&As, after readings or students in the classroom, they're asking things like, how do you know when something is done?
Yeah.
Where do you get your ideas? How do you not make something worse when you're revising it? How do you know when it's actually getting better? How do you have the courage to write the thing you can't bear to write? That's a big one. And so all of these questions kind of boil down to one thing, which is how do you do what you do? Like,
Mhm.
what's the secret sauce? And so I kind of thought to myself, if creativity were a recipe that someone could come up with ingredients for, what would those ingredients be? And of course, like your ingredients might be different from mine. And there are endless ingredients, but I spent a lot of time writing down lots and lots of words and then narrowing them down to the 10 that are in this book. And that's what gave me the structure. And by the time I had those ingredients and the structure, I thought, okay, I think each ingredient should have a pep talk, a letter directly to the reader. I think each one should have craft essays that deal with that kind of spring from that element. And then I want there to be resources because I think what we need are we need encouragement, but we also need tools. And one without the other feels insufficient. So how
Yeah.
can I give prompts and, sort of lists of further reading so that people can kind of make their own big, beautiful syllabus of things to read from just kind of paging through this book.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because this space of being encouraged and inspired, but also have a pathway towards executing and actually refining your craft is so vital. And like you said, they go hand in hand. You can't do one without the other, because the one advice, before I really embarked on my writing career, I would say, like, how do you do it? Like, is it waking up at 5 in the morning? And author after author would just say, you need to write, like you need to actually
Yeah.
practice the things that you're inspiring to do and like get it on paper, get it out of your mind. And the advice that you offer your students is like, it's your responsibility to change things. That is practical in real life and on the page, right? Like you have to,
Yeah.
like, actually go out and do the thing that you want to become.
Yeah.
I'm so interested in maybe like the level from, because you said you put this book in the drawer and then you had your memoir, You Could Make This Place Beautiful, and then the classic Keep Moving, which at some point I had ripped out pages of Keep Moving and put it on my vision board. Like there were so
Oh,
many things that before, when it was Twitter, like I would also
yeah.
put things out.
Back RIP Twitter.
RIP Twitter. Like I would literally just like print out your words constantly, because not only are they motivating, but there's just like the simple elegance that you have with words. Can you share how you're able to build upon that? Like, what was the difference creating Dear Writer versus doing Keep Moving or You Can Make This Place Beautiful? Were you using the same craft practices to write this out compared to those other two projects?
Yeah, it's funny. I had a book event this week and my children came, and it's the first book event that they've been able to come to, I think, um, since Good Bones, my book of poems that came out in 2017, because pandemic meant I had some virtual book tours entirely. And then with the memoir, it didn't really make any sense for them to be in the room because it was a little bit sensitive for them to be
Yeah.
sitting in the room for that. And my son, when I got home, said, I was going to ask a question during the Q&A. He's 12. But then I thought that might be weird. So I thought I'd wait and ask you here. And I was like, okay, what's the question? And he said, well, you said you get ideas from like nature and just sort of stuff in the world for your poems. But how do you get ideas for other kinds of writing? Like if you're writing fiction or essays or plays or children's books, like where do the ideas come from? Is it the same or different? I thought, good question, 12-year-old boy, right? Like how is the process different? And my answer to him is really it's not, which I
Yeah.
find so interesting. And maybe also permission giving if there are people, watching and listening who are like, oh, I've always been a poet and I feel like I would love to try writing essays or try writing fiction, but I don't I feel like that's not my lane and I should stay in my lane. Or I've always written fiction, but I'd love to write about my family, or I'd love to try, like, what would it feel like to write a sestina or a villanelle or a sonnet? Like, do I have the chops for that? Because I've never really done it. And my advice is always like boldly swerve out of your lane. Like
Yeah.
whatever you think your lane is, and this is not just writing advice, right? This is life advice. Like stop staying in your lane because chances are whatever skill set, whatever resources you're drawing on to make what you're making now, 99.9% of that is portable.
Yeah.
You can pack those things up in your little bag from poetry and shuffle them over to journalism and shuffle them over to playwriting and shuffle them over to a short story. There are very few things I've found that don't translate from one genre to the other. So process-wise, it's really not that different to be writing
Mhm.
little quotes or essays for Keep Moving than to sort of expanding a little bit for the memoir, to writing poems, to talking about craft. It's all coming from the same well, basically.
and you're pulling from your lived experience. And I love the fact that when you are writing, whether it's within your poetry or within this beautiful book, like you are honoring both the messy and the magical parts of writing. And
Mm.
you move through it with such confidence, and you even offer us a glimpse of the things that you're unsure about or uncertain, like all of it lives in the same space. Do you ever have, creative blocks or periods of doubt? And how do you like move through that? Like, how was this book, even though you've been able to pull together these 10 beautiful essential things, did you ever have any kind of blocks within writing this book that is about craft and inspiration?
Sure. I mean, it's hilarious that I was like, oh, I have to rewrite that entire book. I mean, it's true. Like it's not easy. I mean, and I tell my students this all the time. There's no point, at least in my experience, there is no point you get to in this life of making things. I don't care if you're a writer or a painter or a photographer, a dancer, an actor. I don't think there's any point you get in a creative life where you become exempt from the difficulty of it, or
Mhm.
even the self-doubt
Yep.
that happens, or sometimes it's like, two steps forward and three steps back. There isn't. There is no point at which I just don't think that it's real that you get to a point where you're like, that's not happening for me. Everything is just smooth sailing from here on out. And honestly, thank goodness.
Yeah, because
Failure
it just
keeps me honest.
yes, absolutely. It's like the moments of rejection often lead to reflection, like you need
Yes.
that, like that moment to kind of be still and say, look, okay, like this isn't working, but what will? And it just redirects you. Um, a lot of writers also struggle with perfectionism, and you have also offered some examples on how to like balance discipline with great tenderness.
Mm.
Can you elaborate on some of the like tips that you offered in this book about battling perfectionism or to kind of getting out of that rut of being self-critical?
Yeah, I mean it's probably one of the reasons why I despite the fact that it's sometimes embarrassing, I share early drafts in this book.
Yeah.
And there are even scans of notebook pages of like not even early drafts, but early thoughts, like the very first scribblings into the idea for a poem. And I show those to my students when I teach. Because I find that people are sometimes, they're perfectionists. They
Yeah.
sometimes don't want to let go of things to turn things in because they just think, oh, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. I don't want the workshop to see this. I don't want my professor to see this. I don't want my writing group to see this because then they'll know I'm not perfect. Newsflash, none of us is perfect. It's fine, first of all. But also, I think there is this misconception that you get to a certain point in your writing life and things just come out whole and perfect and shining. Like, I would hate for anyone to think that I sit down at this desk and poems just happen to me.
Right.
They do not. They do not. Like, I start the way I start poems at 48, the way I started poems at 14,
Wow.
which is it's a mess. It doesn't make much sense. I have to weed through that draft to find what I think of as like the hot spots, like where are the interesting bits out of all of the stuff I just wrote down,
Mhm.
and what can I sort of glean from this and then maybe expand upon.
Mhm.
None of that changes, right? Like it's just the way that it is. And so that's part of sort of battling perfectionism is sharing how difficult it continues to be, and yet how invigorating that difficulty is. Like, I don't know about you, but if I sat down and poems just happened, it would be boring for me.
Yeah, it's so true. Like you have to like struggle through it. Like I appreciate the rigor and the revision and the back and forth that requires for you to get to a good piece of art. And
Yes.
especially when you're able to like land on a sentence or a paragraph that you're just like, I did that. Like this is exactly what I wanted to like articulate. There's that energy that comes with it. And if you,
Yes.
like you said, if it's too simple, it's like you didn't earn it. You didn't work through it, you know?
Yeah, and I think there's a balance because right with that perfectionistic impulse, you could never let go of the thing
Right.
because it's never ready. And I've said before, and I believe this wholeheartedly. If I had known how many millions of people would read my poem Good Bones, I never would have submitted it anywhere because I
Wow.
would have been so panicked at the idea of where it was going that I wouldn't have been able to let go of it. So, like,
Yeah.
it's actually a mercy and a blessing that when we are making things, we don't know what will happen. The answer is that nothing might happen. Like, we might send it out and no one takes it. We might send it out and it shows up in a magazine and 20 people read it and they like it and then we go on to make other things. We actually have no idea what is going to happen. And the best thing we can do, both to combat, I think, fear and to combat perfectionism, is to not think too much about where a thing is heading and to focus on it while we have it and then to get immediately on to starting something new when we're done with it,
Yeah. And
right?
yes, absolutely. And that leads to my next question, which one of my favorite chapters was surprise.
Uh,
And you open with this beautiful invitation to the writer, and you say, I've been thinking about the ways we surprise ourselves, about the human capacity for growth and change, how elastic our lives are, and how they can contain anything, even the things that don't seem possible. And it's like that surprise, right? It's like you can write a poem that is read by one person or a million, but that is like part of the creativity and the artistic process of you creating without expectation. And in this chapter, you really talk about how to get like on the page and off and get ready to surprise yourself. Can you elaborate on just that practice of infusing play and practice and inviting these things into your life so you can be in this headspace to write freely and really be liberated on the things that you engage in on like in a book and just in your life? Because I feel like this book offers life advice and also writing advice at the same time.
Isn't it funny? I think it's all kind of the same. Like even when someone asks you a question like, how do I know when something is done?
Yeah, that's a
Well,
question about trusting yourself.
that's not just writing advice. Like, how do you know when you're done with something? How do you know when you're done with a relationship, a job, a situation, a city? Like, how do you know? Like, what is that? It's like, how does it feel in your nervous system,
Yes.
right? Yeah, there are a lot of things, but I think with surprise, which is really related to play, so much of the surprise in a piece of writing is like loosening your white knuckled hold on the thing and
Yeah.
thinking you know what you're doing. So really, I mean, it's funny. It's like I get that author and authority are related words, right? It's
Yes.
tricky. So how can I be the author of this piece of writing and also sort of relinquish being the authority in it?
Mhm.
And the way that I do that is by coming to the page without an agenda
Yeah.
and not letting my ego drive, right? I think that one of the quickest ways to kill a piece of writing is to sit down at your computer, at your notebook, and be like, okay, now I'm going to write a poem about X. I'm going to write
Mhm.
an essay about X. Aboutness is a trap.
Mhm.
So, how do you maybe start with image or metaphor or even an anecdote or a conversation and start with the particular? Like, let the details release the meaning rather than sort of hammering home some agenda of theme or meaning that you might have that kind of I don't know, flattens what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, you want to offer something to the reader so they can have a close read of it. So they can like read in between the lines and just sit with it and ponder things. That's the another, essential thing is the wonder. A lot
Yeah.
of times things are handed to us, whether it's through media or social media, and there's a lot of regurgitating. So it's like, what do you really think about a subject? How does it make you feel, in your body, in your mind? It's like the pondering is what like really leads to more creativity and an openness with the work.
Oh, I so agree. And I think, the more kind of surprise and sort of freshness and frankly life we can put into a piece of writing, the more the reader is participating with
Yeah.
us. Like it's sort of a way of making a piece of writing hospitable and welcoming for another person. If you've got it all figured out, it's sort of closed, right? Like
Mhm.
that piece of writing is closed. And so when you hand it to someone else, you're handing them a closed thing that then they have to work to find their way into. Well, what if you create it in more of an open spirit and then
Mhm.
you hand it to the reader and they're automatically just welcomed into that piece of writing and can sort of make their own associations?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
to me is a better model.
I completely agree. One of the audience questions this could be a wonderful segue is just this idea. They're asking about what helpful thoughts on nurturing creative energy while
Mm.
the throes of life, from parenting to having so many things are happening in the world right now. Where like we have these tools. How do you like hone your creative energy and hone that vulnerability so you can tell the story, in particular with parenting too? Like I have gotten a lot of tips from you. um like you mentioned your son earlier, and one of the things I do with my son now are nature walks, and where we find
Yes.
nature. And that was something like when I read your book, I was like, oh, this is like a fun idea. So me and my son are constantly picking up our treasures and looking at like in nature in a different way because I read your words.
I love that.
So I just would love, I feel like our audience would appreciate those like rituals that you have that help you keep grounded in writing when things feel, a little bit hectic or chaotic.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is, as a parent, I've been, writing since before I had kids. So I have written with babies, I've written with toddlers, preschoolers, elementary school. Now I've got a middle schooler and a high schooler, and at all stages. And yeah, there are times where I'm like, oh, I guess I'm going to be drafting this poem on the sidelines of a soccer practice, or I guess I'm going to be taking notes in my phone in the pickup line at carpool. My writing habits are very catch as catch can. I don't write at the same time every day for a certain amount of time. And I say that because if there are especially parents with young kids, but frankly, if you're caretaking anyone, if you're caretaking your aging parents, right, it can be really hard to feel like your life can accommodate a regular writing practice. And so
Yeah.
part of what I talk about in this book is that's okay. Like you don't have to do that in order to be quote unquote a real writer, right?
Yeah.
You can make time for it wherever it suits you. And maybe that's not every day, or maybe it's not at the same time every day, but that doesn't lessen the fact that you're doing it. If you're doing it, that's enough. And the other thing I would say to that is I really believe that taking care of yourself as a whole person is taking care of the writer inside you. And so
Mm,
that means that some days what your whole person needs is brunch with a friend, right? Or what your whole person needs is a road trip with three of your favorite people to see a concert of a band you haven't seen in 5 years. Is it writing? No, but it's taking care of the person you are, and the writer you are is inside there. And so if we're burning ourselves out, whether it's with caregiving or with work or anything else, we're not taking care of the maker in
yeah.
us. And so I guess like the ultimate advice is cut yourself some slack. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, it's such a real answer because we're all, like you said, caregiving comes in many forms, and you have to focus on yourself, even if it's at that 10 minutes, at 5 minutes a day in the nursery line. Like you have to find ways to really nurture yourself. And another part of that nurturing is like finding your voice. And I would love to hear from you. What does it mean to claim your voice? And
Mm.
how can emerging writers begin that process? So often when it is, your first time you're in workshop, you're trying to write that debut novel or write your memoir, you're trying to figure out your voice, the tone, how to sound authentic. Can you talk about that process of trusting yourself further and how to claim your voice?
Yeah, I mean it's tricky. it's really tricky, especially in situations where we have a lot of other voices in our ears. And that those voices can come in the form of books that we're reading, right?
Mhm.
Like I can tell when a student has been reading mostly Edgar Allan Poe. I can tell when a student has been reading mostly Sylvia Plath.
Mhm.
Like we're all kind of cover artists at first, right? Just like musicians, when we first start writing, we usually imitate, whether
Yeah.
we mean to or not. We end up sounding a lot like what we're reading and what we're
Mhm.
exposed to. And so, like my earliest poems were Sylvia Plath cover poems. And it took me years to finally get to a point where I was reading something and I thought, "Oh, no, that sounds like Maggie." Like
Yeah.
it might not be a great Maggie Smith original, but it's a Maggie Smith original. It doesn't sound like a knockoff Sylvia
It's not a
Plath.
persona, you're
No, it's not a persona. Yeah, like I'm not putting on somebody else's vocabulary or syntax or tone or experience. And so I think first thing with emerging writers, it's like allow yourself to be imitative at first and don't feel bad about it because that's what we all do. And
Yeah.
frankly, it can be really instructive even to give yourself the assignment of write a poem in the style of X, write an
Mhm.
essay in the style of X because you will inevitably come up with things that are 100% you. You actually
Yeah.
can't fully imitate another person. So it can be a really nice way in. The other thing I would say is we have to be really careful about balancing feedback and sort of opinions of other people against our own sense of self.
Yeah.
And so it's completely possible that in a workshop, the person to your right after reading your poem or story says, "Well, I don't know about the rest of it, but definitely keep the opening sentence because it's genius. Like, don't touch that." But the
Right.
person sitting on the other side of you might be like, "Well, I don't know about definitely change the first sentence and the rest of it is fine." You can't take both pieces of advice. And these are both people that you might respect and the advice is well-meaning. So what happens when you get a bunch of advice from a bunch of people and some of it's contrary? You
Yeah.
cannot make like the sort of Franken poem that is a mismatch of like pieces and parts of other people's thinking. So every time you get advice on a piece that you're working on, you still have to take it inside you and see how it rings against your own idea of what you're trying to build.
Mhm.
And some well-meaning advice doesn't jive with what you're trying to build. So you can be like, I respect you. I know you meant well. You are not my ideal reader for this particular piece. So I'm going to respectfully set that aside and pay more attention to these things. And then the last thing I would say about voice is read everything aloud. Read
Mhm.
everything aloud. I came to that through poetry because poetry is meant to live in the air. Poems were never meant to only live on paper. And so I cannot write or revise a poem without reading it aloud many, many times because I will hear an awkward bit of rhythm. I will hear a tongue twister. I will hear alliteration overkill or something that sounds a little stilted.
Mhm.
My eye won't see those things.
Yeah.
The ear is the truth teller when it comes to the sort of music of language. And that is not just for poetry. I read my memoir aloud as I wrote it. I read this book aloud as I wrote it. And part of that is I know I'm going to have to record an audiobook,
Yeah.
right? And I'm going to
Yeah.
sit in a booth and I'm going to have to read this thing out loud. And I don't want to realize in the booth that I have
Mhm.
a lot of I do nots in this book because I don't say I do not unless
Mhm.
I'm being emphatic. Like, I
Right.
do not want you to stay out past midnight, my
Mhm.
child. I do not say I do not unless I'm being kind of snarky or emphatic. I say I don't. I am Midwestern. We use contractions. So even just reading your work out loud to make sure it sounds if it's supposed to sound like you, make sure it sounds like you. And that's something that I think, it's not hard work. It just requires a little privacy, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great tip. I also read all my work aloud because the rhythm, as you mentioned, and just like you want it to sound natural and authentic, especially if you're writing a memoir or you want to connect, right? And the voice
Yeah.
it does that. Um, as I was like reading the book, I also kept thinking, what is like the one piece of advice in your book that you wish someone had given to you, especially in the beginning of your journey? Were these tips that like, as you said, came to you, but if there was like one thing you could pick, like, oh, when I was 14 or 19 or 20, like if someone had said this to me then, it would have made a tremendous difference.
It's probably the advice that I got from Stan Plumley, the late Stan Plumley, which is I think I call it the best writing advice I've ever gotten in the book. And he says something like, "Go deep within yourself and stay alone there. That is where the poems come from.
Wow.
Don't worry about audience. You are the audience." I'm not sure I got that completely correct, but it was an email that he sent to me after Good Bones went viral. And I was having a little bit of a crisis. Like I was a little stuck, frankly. Like I just didn't know how to write after that. And maybe it's a little hard to explain, but I just thought I'd never felt like I'd never felt so many eyes on me before. I'd been writing poems and publishing, books with small presses, and the poetry reading audience is like a pretty small, discerning
Mhm.
audience. And suddenly that poem, when it went viral, it wasn't just poets reading it. It
Mhm.
was just like, it just felt like everybody. And
Mhm.
that was scary. And I thought, so how do I write my next poem or the poem after that or the poem after that, knowing these people are watching and listening? And having maybe expectations that this is the kind of poem, like maybe this is the only thing they've ever read of mine. And so this is what they think I do. And
Yeah.
so I don't want to disappoint them. Like, how do I make the next thing? And I think it was a blessing in a way that I wasn't a musician with a hit song, right? Because I didn't have a manager or a record label or anybody in my ear. I didn't even have an agent back then. Like I didn't have anybody telling me anything about what to do. And bless his heart, Stan Plumley emailed because he could tell I was struggling and feeling a little stuck and gave me that advice. Go deep inside yourself and stay alone there. Don't worry about audience. You are the audience. And just that permission to create for me
Mhm.
first and not worry so much about how the thing would be received, not worry about where it's traveling or where it might travel was so important. And I feel like that could have been useful to me at any age.
Yeah. I mean, it's so perfect because that being introspective and just pausing,
Yes.
that's the thing that allows for that well. You're constantly filling your creative well. Like you need to just be still within it.
Yes.
Um, Another chapter that really digs into what it means to sit with new work for me was the one talking about restlessness and restraint and how you use those as like creative tools to really lift your writing and thinking about new structure and format. Can you talk about why you included that in particular? And I just thought the word restlessness was so good because that is like sometimes when I'm writing, I can tell when I feel agitated or it's not coming out exactly the way I want it to, or my editor's asking me questions that perhaps I don't want her to ask me. And I'm like, set. I'm like, leave it,
Yep.
but
Leave
like,
it. I don't want to deal with that right
I don't
now.
want to deal with it. But they're actually good questions. I'm like, I need to
Yeah.
go
I'm like,
with
but I'm
that.
studying that because I don't want to deal with that right now.
Right, right. So just like, can you talk about what that means for a writer or any artist to sit in the agitation and the restlessness?
Yeah, it's funny. I think of all the 10 ingredients, that's the like the maybe the one that makes people kind of go, huh?
Mhm.
Like, oh yeah, we need hope. We need tenacity. Sure,
And
we need
wonder.
wonder and attention and we need all these things. And then restlessness. I think we have such I mean, the word itself has a negative connotation, right? Like who wants to feel restless? Like
Yeah.
agitated, I think is a great way to describe that. Like that kind of like antsy feeling of
Mhm.
like it's just not quite happening. But I think it's so necessary. And part of what I think we need especially as creative people, is the ability to tolerate discomfort.
Yes.
I mean, frankly, we need that as people. Like I've been tolerating a whole lot of discomfort in my life and in the world. And so it's good practice, right, for bringing it to the page. But that's the thing. Like we cannot expect instant gratification. We cannot count on first thought being best thought. We really have to be able to sit with the fact that when we're making something, it might not happen quickly. It might not look good at first. It might not even be the form in currently that it needs to be in.
Mhm.
And so when I'm revising, especially, everything is up for grabs. Like I
Yeah.
really don't treat revision as tinkering. And I know I've had students, particularly younger students, who really sort of, I think, confuse editing and revising. Like they,
Oh,
right?
oh,
Like
can you
they,
clarify the difference for those watching? Can you
yeah,
be distinct?
like revising, like the root of that re is again,
Mhm.
vise is see. So when you're revising something, you're seeing it again. So what
Mhm.
does it mean to come to a piece of writing, to open up a document maybe you closed 2 days ago, draft one, and you're
Mhm.
opening up draft one and you're seeing it with new eyes?
Mhm.
That does not mean, oh, maybe I should move the commas.
Yeah.
That means I am actually, everything is up for grabs. I'm seeing this with new eyes. Oh, maybe I don't need the opening. Maybe the title's wrong. Maybe it should end 2 stanzas or 2 paragraphs early. Maybe the middle's gone slack. Maybe the end is the beginning. I mean, really not thinking about it as just like making little tinkery changes.
Right, right.
I
Or
think,
being too like mechanical. It's like really like
yes.
that everything is up for grabs.
Yeah, I think when we're editing, that's when things get more mechanical, right? Like we feel like we've got all the stuff we need is there, where
Mhm.
we are really fine tuning. And I think a lot of times students think of revision as editing. They're like, "Oh, we're just going to
Mhm.
polish this up." And it's like, "No, you've only written one draft of this poem,
Yeah.
essay, or
Oh my gosh,
story."
you're so right. Yeah,
Right?
that
Like,
happens all the time. I think people do conflate the two.
yeah, like you're not ready to polish anything. You just built this thing. It is a hot mess. It's supposed to be a hot mess. Like that's not a criticism. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. You're in the sweet spot of hot mess because you're in the early drafts.
Yeah.
So, not like really approaching an early draft with a sense of, okay, everything's up for grabs. Now what? Oh,
Mhm.
maybe that essay wants to be a poem. Maybe that free verse poem wants to grow into a received form. Like, oh, there's enough repetition in this poem. Maybe it wants to be a pantoum. I don't know. Let's try it. I really think of revision as like, let's try it time. It's
Yeah.
it's experimentation time. Editing, by the time we get there, we're starting to turn some dials to make sure that it's where it needs to be.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Like it's like the revising of reimagining, changing placement. My favorite thing is when writers do the placement where you like print out all your pages and you like lay them on the floor and try to like move things around in different ways or just yeah, it's a requirement to really get into a flow too, like just seeing
Yes.
things in a different way.
And it's tactile. I mean, I absolutely still do that. I print everything. I don't
Yeah.
care if it's 100 pages or 400 pages. I print everything and I've got my floor and I'm shuffling the pages in my hands and sometimes I color code things and it looks like a craft project and it looks like a disaster. And it's the same process I've always undertaken. It's never gotten neat.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's supposed to. I think it's not a bug, it's a feature of this
Yeah.
process is that it's messy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've mentioned the importance of writing even when no one is watching and keeping your practice open and messy. Like I love that description because it offers you like permission to just do the thing. It doesn't have to be neat and perfect. It just needs to be out there and done. How do we stay connected to that sense of purpose when
Mm.
is this kind of like performance that happens online and there's sometimes things just like look a certain way? How can we just give ourselves permission to be more messy, and that idea of writing even when no one is watching, like you're writing for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, please don't tell anybody that pays me, but I would do this for free. Like,
Mhm.
I did this for free for many years. In fact, I did this and paid for it for many years because in the beginning, sometimes you're working at a loss to
Mhm.
be a writer, right? It's like actually more expensive to do it than it is to not do it, to get to travel to give a reading someplace or to pay your own way to a conference. Like I was in the red for a long time and I would still be writing if I were in the red because it's part of who I am and I can't not do it. I think those of us who make things know how different it feels in our body when we are making things than when we aren't.
Mhm.
Like when I'm not making things, I'm cranky. I'm not that fun to be around when I'm not making things. Like I feel a little clogged. Like there's stuff that is not coming through me that should be coming through me. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, that's the thing. Like forget social media, forget the sort of like forget capitalism, frankly, which gets in the way so much of what we're supposed to be doing. Like what does it feel like in your body when you're making things? Don't you
Mhm.
want to give that to yourself more? And
Mhm.
I know, I mean, I'm tempted to say in these times, but
Yeah.
like, please, in all times.
All times. I
And
agree.
all times. Like these times are hard. Last year was hard. The year before was hard. 2020 was hard. 2016 was a mess. Like all times are hard. If not for us, then for someone, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no time that's easy for all of us. And so I'm tempted to say in these times, and I won't, but what I will say is nothing makes me feel more like myself, like more connected to the core of who I am.
Mhm.
And nothing helps me dial past the static of the news cycle,
Yeah.
and everything that's going on in the world around me, like sitting down with my pen and paper and having a conversation with my own mind as I'm writing something. And so in a way, it's sort of like a gift that you're giving to yourself to take that time for yourself, to reconnect and kind of come home to yourself, to
Mhm.
spend the time um, making art, which doesn't need to exist. And you're doing it anyway. And to me, that's just like such a beautiful endeavor.
Yeah, and it's such a worthy one. One thing that you do is end this book on such a beautiful generative practice. Like I love the fact that you end with an ode. And if those who don't know, an ode, a poem of praise to a person, place, event, object, or even an abstract idea. I just thought that was such a beautiful way to close in terms of the exercises. Can you talk about what is this entire book in praise of? Would you say
Uh,
creativity, craft, like what in one word, what is the essence?
oh my gosh. Well, I mean, it's dedicated to my teachers. So I think, and maybe in the wider sense, it's in praise of community, right?
Yes.
Because we're not doing this by ourselves. We're just not. Like we have the benefit of having others work alongside us, lift us up as they climb ahead of us, offer us wisdom when we need it, comfort us when we're down, pull us out of our funk when we think we can't do it anymore. I mean, I really do think, connection is one of the ingredients, but I think community is sort of like the underpinning of all of this. And it's probably why it took me, 20 years of teaching and writing to write it. It's just like I needed to gather my people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a great thing because, like again, I'm fangirling right now. Like I've been reading your work for such a long time. And this is what books do. They offer mentorship. I had never met you before, but I really felt mentored and guided by you through your words. And
Oh,
I think this beautiful, beautiful book offers that in even a richer form, like the exercises, the letters, the fact that you even have, it's like your signature in Maggie. It's such like a beautiful detail too. Like you can see
My
David.
handwriting is in there.
Yeah, just like all these small things are just so warm and inviting. And it doesn't matter the stage of your career, whether, at this point I've written 3 books, but like it doesn't matter. Like anyone can pick up this book and just feel held by it. So thank you for writing this and offering so many good suggestions for further reading. Like I've just been
Oh,
getting
good.
my long note. Can you just, this is more of a playful question, but how did you organize all the further reading? Did you know from the beginning which ones you wanted to add? Do you have like a running list? What was the schedule for that?
It's funny. I think a lot of it came from teaching because when I have a syllabus and I give assignments, and I often tell, like, I have my students write odes, I have my students write inform, I have my students write letter poems. So a lot of these exercises are things that I've done in the classroom for years and years. And typically, what I do when I teach is let other people's poems be the prompt. And so if I'm teaching odes, for example, I will give my students a packet of odes and we will talk about them first before they do any writing. We will sit and talk through the packet of odes. We'll read them aloud. We'll talk about what we like and notice about them. We'll do some close readings of them because I mean, I'm a good teacher, but poems are the best teachers of poetry, right? Like you can learn a lot from just reading and modeling, what you're doing off of somebody else's work. And so that's always where we begin. And then I'll say, okay, now you have all of these examples. Go write. And feel
Mhm.
free to draw whatever inspiration you want to from any of these examples, or just do your own thing, whatever. And so a lot of these reading suggestions were things that I've been assigning and making copies of like a Luddite and handing out to my students or sending links when people are like, "Oh, I'm interested in this. What do you love?" And so I kind of have like this running list of things that I love. And then my editor Jenny Shu also was like, "Oh, have you read this? This would be a perfect fit for this. Or have you read these 2 stories? Or have you read this essay?" And so she actually sent me down a rabbit hole or two finding other things. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's perfect. I've never taught that text, but now it's going to be added into my classroom. So that was a really fun thing to kind of do a roundup.
Yeah, it was so good. I took so many notes on further reading. Some I recognized, some they were new to me. And I also have been thinking about what dear writer, like what other books it will be in conversation with. So naturally, Anne Lamott, Bird by
Oh,
Bird, Julie Cameron, like all these incredible, like legendary, like writers. And were you thinking of them as you were writing? Are there other books about writing that shaped or influenced your writer?
oh, sure. Like I have a library cart sitting right next to my desk right now, and the entire top row is craft books. And you just named
Oh,
one of
yes.
them, Bird
Bird.
by Bird.
Oh
This hardcover I received in 1995
oh, I love that.
when I graduated from high school. And it is beat up, it is highlighted, there are post-it notes in it. It is a very well-loved book. I have the paperback too, the anniversary copy, but that one. I have so many writing books that I love. I don't know if you know this one, Still Writing by
Oh,
Danny Shapiro. Danny Shapiro, Still Writing, excellent. This one is one I teach from a ton. It's called The Practice of Poetry.
okay.
Writing exercises from poets who teach. It's entirely full of prompts. The entire book is writing prompts.
I love that. That's so excellent.
It's my favorite. I do have Writing Down the Bones over here. I've got Annie Diller's The Writing Life. I've got Stephen King's On Writing. I've got The Art of Memoir by Mary Carr. I've
Oh, yeah.
I'm a complete fangirl for craft books. I love them. I teach from them. I dip back into them. I think it's so interesting. Like a book that I read when I was 18, I could read again at 28, again at 38, again at 48, and I will see different things, right? Like they just keep giving because the book doesn't change, but we do.
Yep.
Like you bring your different writer self to that text. And so you're picking up based on what you're working on now and where you are in your kind of journey, you're picking up different pieces. So it always feels like I'm reading a new book, even though I've read these things a million times because I'm showing up different every time.
I'm the same way. I do a lot of rereading, and sometimes people are surprised by that, but I'm like, it's just like watching your like favorite movie or listening to your favorite song. Each time it evokes
Sure.
a different memory, a different like part of you is opened up when you reread something. And I do that a lot with poetry. It's been something that I've constantly like gone to just revisit and like almost ground myself in a lot of ways. So
Oh, yeah.
I love that. I think one of my last questions will really be about how has writing Dear Writer shifted your perspective on your own identity as a writer? Are you
Oh,
feeling differently? Are you more open? What has this book done to your just like your philosophy around writing?
I don't know if I've even quite metabolized that yet because it's so new to me. But I will say, I've had more fun talking about this book than I've had talking about any other book that I've written.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's maybe it is because it's about writing and it's just something that I like to geek out about.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's because this book is really intimate to me, but not vulnerable in the same way that a memoir is, because it's personal but not personal.
Right.
But to me, this has been just like a 100% positive experience.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't have any of that sort of like, I don't have nerves about it, which is a kind of an odd thing for me, frankly. So yeah, I mean, having been an 18-year-old who received Bird by Bird, it feels really special to me for 30 years later to have written what I think of as my Bird by Bird. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Maggie. This has
Oh
been
my
a
gosh,
wonderful
thank
conversation.
you.
What an incredible hour the two of you spent together. It was so enjoyable and engaging. Go ahead, hold it up, Glory.
It went so fast. There she is.
I
It
know.
matches your sweater, Glory. I love that so
I
much.
tried for you.
I mean, how amazing. What a great conversation. Glory, you are just so skilled, man. You pulled it all out and in such oh God, just love everything about it. And Maggie, I agree. I mean, we posted you for two past books and just your whole vibe right now. I'm just loving every single minute of this. I
Oh,
look away from the screen. So I want to remind folks, both of these incredible, incredible women will be at After Hours. You can come ask your own questions, maybe get some more of that. Lucky for you, some free advice. Come, what an opportunity if you to come pick your brain. How do you get to come to After Hours? Make a donation to FAN in any amount that is meaningful to you. And we do mean that. Come hang out. We've been putting the link in chat for all night long about how to do that. We hope to see a bunch of you there. It's going to be a great conversation. I feel like I have six more. One thing I want to ask you about in After Hours, I want to talk to you about your project with Saeed Jones that's coming out in September. Cannot wait to hear that.
yeah.
He's an amazing individual in
Yep.
ways, so can't wait to hear about that as well. And just to continue, it felt so inspirational. Um, I host so many writers. I'm probably a little bit, I would love to write an actual book. And I just felt like, I don't know. I felt it just was so incredible, this conversation, I
Well, you
felt.
know where to start, right?
I know
Yeah.
where to start. Yeah, that's right. And
Get to it, Lonnie.
I have her emailed herself. Trust me. I have a lot of emailed selves, and trust me, I don't text people, so don't worry, you're safe. All right, we're at 8 o'clock. Thank you both, ladies. We'll see you in about 5 minutes. Take a break for a minute, and we'll open up After Hours and hope to welcome a bunch of you there tonight. So thank you so much, everyone, and good night.
Thanks all.